What if I told you we're playing a 10 mana colorless commander that we can cast without even paying a single mana? This commander will turn all of our creatures into 9/9 bodies. The Capitoline Triad. This is one of the most unique commanders we've seen in a long time. A massive 10 mana colorless legendary creature that has the ability to give us a game-ending emblem. But here's the twist. You see the 10 mana symbol in the mana cost of this card? I can promise you, you'll never pay the full 10 mana to cast this card. In most games, you'll even be paying 0 mana to play this absolute powerhouse of a card. Triad has a built-in cost reduction. It costs 1 less for each historic card you have in your graveyard. Historic permanents include artifacts, legendary cards, and sagas. So instead of ramping to 10 mana like some weird Eldrazi deck, we're gonna mill ourselves and discard our own cards, filling our graveyard with as many historic cards as soon as possible. This way we get a huge cost reduction on Triad and we're able to cast it really early. Or if you have 10 historic permanents in your graveyard, you will even be able to cast it for free. And that's just the first ability of the card. The real power comes in the second ability. Once Triad is on the battlefield, we can exile any number of historic cards from our graveyard with total mana value 30 or greater. When we do, we get an emblem. The emblem simply says creatures you control have base power and toughness 9/9. Let that sink in. Every single creature you control will have base stats 9 power and 9 toughness. Doesn't matter how small the creature was before you got the emblem. Even a small 1/1 sap-rolling token will now be a 9/9 sap-rolling instead. And remember, emblems can't be interacted with. Your opponents can't counter it, they can't remove it. Once you have the emblem, your opponents have no way to interact with it. So you just have to create it once and it will stay around for the rest of the game. The strategy for this deck is really simple. We want to mill ourselves as fast and as much as possible to reduce the cost of Capitoline Triad and give us fodder to exile to get the emblem. Then we want to cast our commander, ideally for 0 mana. Then we want to exile 30 mana worth of historic permanents from our graveyard to create the emblem that will turn all our creatures into 9/9 bodies. After we've done that, we also play a ton of cards that can generate us a ton of small creature tokens, like 1/1 mirror tokens, 1/1 thopter tokens. Due to the emblem we created, all of these small creatures will have 9 power, 9 toughness, and we will just be able to swing with them and close out the game. Since our commander is entirely colorless, this was a really hard deck to build, since we're really limited in the cards we can use. That being said, it's a really fun and unique deck to play. In some games, if you have the perfect hand, you can resolve your commander as early as turn 3 or turn 4. Just create the emblem and yeah, starting from that point, all your creatures will be 9/9 bodies and they will be really hard to deal with. As per usual, I will be going in depth in every single card in the deck and explain why I decided to include it. This video is divided up in 7 categories: the self-mill and discard, the high mana cost creatures, token generators, support and interaction, acceleration, the lands. First up, we have the self-mill and discard section. Capitoline Triad is all about having as many historic permanents in our graveyard as fast as possible. So we play a ton of efficient cards that allow us to mill ourselves or discard our own cards. Codex Shredder, a simple 1 mana artifact which we can tap to make target player mill a card. 99% of the time we will be targeting ourselves since we are the player that really wants to fill their graveyard. For 5 mana and tapping it, we can sacrifice Codex Shredder to return a card from our graveyard to our hand. So later in the game, if you milled a really important card and it's stuck in your graveyard, you can just sacrifice Codex Shredder, return it to your hand, and you'll still be able to cast it. A fantastic self-mill and recursion tool. Shriekhorn, a 1 mana artifact that enters the battlefield with 3 counters on it. By tapping Shriekhorn and removing 1 counter from it, we get to mill 2 cards. This really is one of the best cards to have in your opening hand. In total, this card allows you to mill 6 cards for just 1 mana. Altar of Dementia. It's a 2 mana artifact that allows us to sacrifice creatures. Whenever we sacrifice a creature to Altar of Dementia, target player has to mill cards equal to the sacrificed creature's power. This is just a fantastic self-mill card. Once we resolve this on turn 2, we can just start sacrificing mana dorks or bigger creatures to Altar of Dementia. Your graveyard will be filled really quickly and you will be able to cast Capitoline Triad for free and create the emblem. Once you have enough historic permanents in your graveyard, you can set up some sort of mini loop with Altar of Dementia and your commander. You have Altar of Dementia on the battlefield, you cast Triad for 0 mana, then you sacrifice Triad to Altar of Dementia and you will be able to mill 7 cards. This will up the number of historic permanents in your graveyard and you will be able to cast Triad again for 0 mana. From here on, you will be able to repeat this loop since you will always have more historic permanents in your graveyard than Capitoline Triad will cost. So you will just be able to cast her for 0 mana over and over again until you run out of cards in your library. This sort of mini loop is a perfect way to get 30 mana value of historic permanents in your graveyards and you will always be able to create the emblem. Altar of Dementia also is a fantastic win con. Once you resolve the emblem, all your creatures will have 9 power. You can just start sacrificing creatures to Altar of Dementia, and each time you do, target opponent will have to mill 9 cards. Meaning, if you have enough creatures, you can actually win by just milling your opponents out, instead of swinging with the 9/9 bodies. Collector's Vault. For 2 mana and tapping it, we get to loot and create a treasure token. Looting is fantastic in this deck. We get to draw a card and then discard a card of our choice. So if you do draw some really high mana value creatures, you can just activate this artifact, draw a card, discard the 10 mana creature into your graveyard, and you will already have 10 mana worth of historic permanents to exile for creating the emblem. Most of the time you won't be casting the 10 mana cards, you just want them in your graveyard to get a really fast emblem out with Triad. The fact that we also generate a treasure token every time we use this just pushes the value really over the top. Grinding Station. A 2 mana artifact, and whenever we tap it, we get to sacrifice an artifact. When we do, target player has to mill 3 cards. Another really cheap artifact that we can use to mill ourselves really early in the game. It also has a bonus ability. Whenever an artifact comes into play under any player's control, we get to untap Grinding Station, allowing us to use it again. This card can really give an explosive amount of self-mill. Since we are an entirely colorless deck, we do play a total of 61 artifacts, meaning it's really easy to untap this artifact and just get multiple uses out of it. The fact that we have to sacrifice an artifact whenever we activate this card can actually be looked at as a benefit. Since we don't really want artifacts in play, we really want them in our graveyard to reduce the cost of Triad or get some mana cost in the graveyard to activate the emblem. Mesmeric Orb, probably the strongest self-mill and just mill card in the deck in general. Whenever any permanent becomes untapped, target player has to put the top card of their deck into their library. So whenever you have this on the field and a player goes to their untap step, they will untap all their lands, untap all their creatures, untap all their artifacts, and for every permanent they untap, they will have to mill a card. As you can imagine, versus some decks, this is actually an insane win con. If you play against any token player, any infinite combo player that relies on untapping permanents, this card will just shut them down and mill them out. The game will just be over for them. As for us, usually we will control somewhere between 2 to 20 permanents on the battlefield at all times. We can just untap them, mill ourselves for a huge amount, resolve Triad, create the emblem, and yeah, it's just a really explosive self-mill card. Perpetual Timepiece, a 2 mana artifact which we can tap to mill 2 cards. Pretty solid value, and for 2 mana we can exile Perpetual Timepiece to reshuffle any number of permanents from our graveyard into our deck. Later in the game, if you have some value cards that you'd rather have in your deck than in your graveyard, you can just exile Perpetual Timepiece, you will be able to draw them again. Sliversmith, a 2 mana 1/1 creature. It allows us to discard a card of our choosing, which will usually be a high mana cost card, just so we can resolve the emblem faster. Then we also get to create a 1/1 token, which will become a 9/9 creature once we control the emblem. So this card is both good to get to the emblem faster, and also after we get the emblem, we will get 9/9 tokens out of it. Matzalantli, the Great Door. For 3 mana, we get an artifact that allows us to loot, meaning we get card advantage from drawing a card, and we can put high mana cost cards into our graveyard. If we have 4 or more permanent types in our graveyard, for 4 mana we can tap it and transform it. It will transform into the core. This awesome land will generate X mana of any color equal to the number of permanent cards in our graveyard. The amount of mana you will get from the core is just insane. Since we have so much self-mill, we will always have a ton of permanents in our graveyard. Sadly, to transform it, we need 4 permanent card types in our graveyard. We will have artifact, we will have creature, and we will have land at all times. Then we need a 4th one, and we only play 1 planeswalker to meet this criteria. So yeah, you will have to be lucky and mill the 1 planeswalker in this deck to actually be able to transform into the core. Palantir of Orthanc. It's a really well-known and really strong legendary artifact. At the beginning of our end step, we get to put an influence counter on Palantir, and then we get to scry 2. Then we get to target an opponent. That opponent gets to choose if we get to draw a card or not. If the player chooses to let us not draw a card, we will mill cards equal to the amount of influence counters on Palantir. Then that target opponent will lose life equal to the total mana value of cards we milled. This card is just a must-have for the deck. It allows us to scry, which is really good. If an opponent chooses to let us draw a card, fantastic, it just will generate a ton of card advantage. And the best part, if they decide to not let us draw cards, we get to mill, so fill our graveyard, which is actually what we want, and they will take damage equal to the mana cost of the cards we milled. Obviously, in this Triad deck, we run a ton of cards with really high mana costs, and if we just mill the right cards, we might remove an opponent from the game by Palantir's trigger. Insane. Palantir is probably one of the most fun cards to have on the battlefield, since you actually give your opponents a decision. If they decide to let you mill, and you mill like 30 mana value of creatures and they lose the game because of that, everyone at the table will have a great laugh. Patchwork Gnomes. It's a 3 mana 2/1 creature, really simple ability. We get to discard a card to regenerate this creature. This card can set up for some really explosive Triad plays. You can just resolve this on turn 3 and dump your entire hand into your graveyard. And you can just follow up with Triad, exile 30 mana value from your graveyard and instantly create an emblem. Once you have the emblem, this is also a 9/9 body with an ability discard a card to regenerate this creature, which is pretty cool, I suppose. Argentum Masticore. It's a 5 mana 5/5 first strike body with protection from multicolored. Already in itself a really solid body, and the ability this card has actually seems made for a Triad deck. At the beginning of our upkeep, we have to sacrifice this creature, unless we discard a card. When we do discard a card this way, we get to destroy a non-land permanent with mana value less than the card we discarded. In this deck, we will mostly be discarding cards which have 8, 9, 10 mana value. It lets us deal with any non-land permanent on the battlefield and lets us put big mana value cards into our graveyard. Fantastic fit for the deck. Hollow One. It's a card that has like an ability that reduces its cost whenever we cycle or discard. We don't really care about that. We only care about the fact that it's a 5 mana historic card with cycling 2, meaning when this is in our hand, we can pay 2 mana to discard it and draw a card. This serves 2 purposes. We will have an additional historic card in our graveyard to reduce the cost of Triad. And we will also have an additional 5 mana we can exile from our graveyard to create the emblem. High mana value cards with a really low cycling cost are fantastic in this deck. Shardless Outlander, another really big high mana value creature with basic land cycling 2, meaning like Hollow One, we can just pay 2 mana, put this in our graveyard, and we can get a wastes from our deck into our hand. Another historic card in our graveyard and another 7 mana to use for the emblem. And the last card in this section is Sojourner's Companion, a 7 mana creature with affinity for artifacts, meaning its cost is reduced by 1 generic mana for each artifact we control. And it has artifact land cycling 2, meaning for 2 mana we can discard this card to get an artifact land from our deck into our hand. Another historic card in our graveyard and 7 mana worth more to create the emblem with. Cycling a ton of these high mana value cards early in the game will allow you to get the emblem out really fast. If you like these in-depth deck tech videos, hit the like button, hit subscribe and hit the bell notification icon. As always, you can check out the entire deck on Moxfield in the link in the description. Next up, we have the high mana value creatures. Since we do need a total of 30 mana worth of historic permanents in our graveyard to create the emblem with. When they're milled, they will contribute to the emblem, and later in the game you can just cast these and actually gain a really big benefit out of them. Soul of New Phyrexia. It's a 6 mana 5/5 body with trample. For 5 mana, it has the ability to give all our permanents indestructible until the end of turn. Really awesome card to have on the battlefield, and just whenever you have 5 mana open, and you can protect all your permanents. For 5 mana, we can exile Soul of New Phyrexia from our graveyard to also give all our permanents indestructible until the end of turn. So when you're building your board of tokens or setting up for the emblem, if your opponents do decide to play a board wipe, you can just exile this card from your graveyard and everything will gain indestructible. Most opponents will forget that you have this in your graveyard, and yeah, you will just totally surprise them. Meteor Golem, a 7 mana historic permanent with an awesome ability. If you don't mill this and you cast this later on in the game, whenever it enters the battlefield, you get to destroy any non-land permanent, acting as a solid removal piece. Mirk Battlesphere. Whenever it enters the battlefield, we get to create 4 1/1 Mirk tokens. As mentioned in the intro, the main gist of this deck is just getting the emblem out and then creating as many 1/1 tokens as possible, which will then be buffed to 9/9 creatures. Mirk Battlesphere gives us a total of 5 bodies whenever we cast it. It also has a bonus ability. Whenever Mirk Battlesphere attacks, we can tap Mirk to make it deal damage and get a buffed power, but we don't really care about that. The only reason we play it is because it's a 7 mana creature that enters with a total of 5 bodies whenever we cast it. All 5 of these bodies will be buffed to a 9/9 stat line. Mirk Enforcer. It's a 7 mana 4/4 body with affinity for artifacts. This is basically some sort of a fodder card. It's just a 7 mana body in our graveyard to just add to the 30 mana we need for the emblem. That being said, later in the game, we will always be controlling 7 or more artifacts, so you actually will be able to cast this creature for free. Necron Monolith, a 7 mana 7/7 flying indestructible vehicle. Whenever Necron Monolith attacks, we get to mill 3 cards. Then for each creature card we milled, we get to create a 2/2 artifact token. It's a huge 7 mana body that counts towards the 30 mana for the emblem, and once it's on the battlefield, it's really annoying to deal with since it does have indestructible. It also contributes to our self-mill strategy if we don't have the emblem out yet, and after the emblem it will just create us a ton of tokens, which will then grow to a 9/9 stat line when we have the emblem. The Crew 4 is really easy to activate in this deck since our commander has 7 power. We play a ton of small creatures to actually crew this creature. Pentavus, a 7 mana 0/0 creature. It will enter the battlefield with 5 +1/+1 counters on it. For 1 mana, we can remove a counter from Pentavus to create a 1/1 flying Pentavite token. For 1 mana, we can also sacrifice these Pentavite tokens to put a +1/+1 counter on Pentavus again. So basically, with these abilities, you can have Pentavus plus up to 5 1/1 Pentavite tokens. Pentavus is just a fantastic win con after you got the emblem. You can drop this, it will enter as a 14/14 body since the base stats will be 9/9 plus the 5 +1/+1 counters. If you do decide to activate its abilities, you will have a 9/9 Pentavus and you will have 5 flying 9/9 Pentavite tokens, which is a really good deal for just 1 creature. Threefold Thunderhulk, another really ridiculous card after you got the emblem. It's another 7 mana 0/0 creature and it will enter the battlefield with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, we get to create 1/1 colorless artifact gnome tokens equal to its power. Okay, hear me out. Once you got the emblem and you cast this for 7 mana, it will enter the battlefield as a 9/9 body with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. This means it will enter the battlefield with 12 power. You then will create 12 1/1 gnomes. These 12 1/1 gnomes will have 9/9 base stats due to the emblem. This means you will have a total of 108 power from the gnomes plus 12 from the 3-foot Thunderhulk, and you will get a total of 120 power on board just for casting 1 creature. On top of that, whenever it attacks, you get to create gnomes equal to its power once again, and these will also have 9 power and 9 toughness. Insane. Cityscape Leveler. It's an 8 mana 8/8 trample body, and whenever we cast it or whenever it attacks, we get to destroy target non-land permanent. The owner of that non-land permanent will get to create a tapped Power Stone token, which is usually a worse permanent than the one you just destroyed. The main reasons we play this is it's an 8 mana card that just counts towards the 30 mana we need for the emblem, and later in the game, if we do manage to mill it, it also has the Unearth mechanic, meaning playing for 8 colorless mana, we can just unearth this from our graveyard. It will enter the battlefield with haste. The cast trigger won't resolve since we didn't cast it, we just unearthed it, which is an activated ability. Then we can instantly swing with it, trigger its ability that way, and yeah, then we exile it at the end of combat. So even if we do manage to mill this and we don't use this for the emblem, it still has a use when it's in our graveyard. Kozilek, the Broken Reality. Another 9 mana historic permanent, which we will need to get to the 30 mana for the emblem. If for some reason we do manage to cast the spell later on in the game, up to 2 target players get to manifest the top 2 cards of their library. For each card manifested this way, we also get to draw a card. So whenever we cast this, we will get to draw 4 cards. Manifesting means they will just flip the top card of their library onto the battlefield face down, and it will be a 2/2 body. They can turn it face up at any time by paying the mana cost of the card that was manifested. Usually you will target yourself just to create more bodies that will actually become 9/9 bodies with the emblem. Kozilek also has an aura effect that gives all our other colorless creatures +3/2. Most tokens we create in this deck and all the other creatures we play are colorless, so this is just another small little stat boost. But the main reason why we play this is just because it has a high mana cost of 9 mana, which contributes fantastically towards the emblem. Phyrexian Triniform. It's a 9 mana, 9/9 creature. Whenever it would die, we get to create 3 3/3 Phyrexian artifact tokens. It's another high mana cost historic card. When we would resolve it and it would die, we also get to generate tokens, which synergize fantastically with the emblem. On top of that, it also has the Encore mechanic, meaning if we do have this in our graveyard due to milling ourselves and we don't need it for the emblem, we can activate the Encore ability. For 12 mana, we can exile this card from our graveyard. Then for each opponent, we will create a copy of this creature that has to attack them this turn. Then at the beginning of our next end step, we have to sacrifice these copies, meaning the ability will trigger and we will create 3 3/3 artifact tokens for every copy that died. Usually this will result in you generating 9 3/3 tokens, which is absolutely ridiculous. Pretty similar card, Triplicate Titan. It's a 9 mana, 9/9 with Flying, Vigilance, Trample. Whenever this card would die, we get to create a 3/3 with Flying, a 3/3 with Vigilance, and a 3/3 body with Trample. Another really high value historic card that will generate us a ton of tokens whenever it dies. Perfect both before the emblem and after the emblem. Ancient Stone Idol, a 10 mana, 12/12 creature with Flash. It's another sort of fodder card. We just needed some high mana value historic permanents. Yeah, we just want to mill this guy to get the emblem out really fast. This actually pays for 1/3 of the mana costs we need for the emblem. That being said, if this card is stuck in our hand and we have no way to ditch it in our graveyard, if you do play against a token deck, for example, or something that just swings with a lot of creatures, the cost of this card is reduced by 1 generic mana for each single attacking creature. So if you're at a table with an Edgar player and they're actually swinging with 20 vampires, you can flash this in for 0 mana, which is pretty cool if you can pull that off, I suppose. Kozilek, the Great Distortion, another 10 mana historic creature. Whenever you cast Kozilek and you have less cards than 7 in your hand, you draw cards until you have 7 cards in your hand. You will basically just refill your hand whenever you cast them. We can also discard cards to counter cards with the exactly same mana cost as the card we discarded, which might be really relevant later in the game. You just fill your hand when you play him and then you have a lot of cards you can discard to counter other spells with. You just have to make sure the mana costs do match. Metalwork Colossus. It's an 11 mana, 10/10 artifact body, and its casting cost is reduced by the total converted mana cost of non-creature artifacts we control. Most of the time we will be controlling a ton of mana rocks, a ton of really cheap artifacts, and the cost of this card will just be reduced by a ton. So we will actually be able to hardcast it. We'd probably rather mill it since it contributes to 11 out of the 30 mana we need for the emblem. It also has a bonus ability. If we sacrifice 2 artifacts we control, we can return this card from our graveyard to our hand. Later on in the game, if you're really in a grindy modus, this might be relevant. Next up, we have the token generators. These are the cards that will generate us a ton of small little tokens that will become 9/9 bodies after we created the emblem. These are the actual win cons of the deck. Create the emblem and swing with the buffed up little creatures. Hangerback Walker. It's a double X cost creature that will enter the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on itself. For 1 mana and tapping it, we can put an extra +1/+1 counter on Hangerback Walker. Whenever Hangerback Walker would die, we get to create X 1/1 flying thopter tokens, X being the number of +1/+1 counters it had on itself. You can cast this really early in the game for just 2 mana for example, and every turn you can invest 1 mana into it, tap it and just grow its body. We play a ton of ways in this deck to actually sacrifice artifacts. If you do sacrifice this with a ton of counters on it, you will get an army of tokens. Then you can just get the emblem out and all of these will be 9/9 flying bodies. Crazy. Glaring Flashraker. Whenever we cast any colorless spell, we get to create a 0/1 Eldrazi spawn token. We can sacrifice these tokens to add 1 colorless mana to our mana pool. Then whenever another colorless creature enters the battlefield under our control, Glaring Flashraker will deal 1 damage to each opponent. Since our deck is entirely colorless, it will generate us a ton of tokens. After we got the emblem, these will be 9/9 Eldrazi spawn tokens. It also accelerates our mana really quickly before we get the emblem, since every time we will cast a spell, we will get to generate a token we can sacrifice for mana. And every spell we cast or every creature we create will deal 1 damage to each opponent. We do have some effects that will generate us a ton of tokens at once in this deck, and Glaring Flashraker can really deal a ton of damage to all of your opponents at once. This really is one of the best uncommon cards ever printed. Nuisance Engine. It's a 3 mana artifact. We can put 2 mana into it, tap it and create a 0/1 colorless artifact pest token. It's just a really simple artifact that can generate us a ton of tokens over time. Best case scenario, we can use this a ton of times before we create the emblem, just generate a ton of tokens, and instead of 0/1 creatures, these will be 9/9 creatures. Canoptech Scarab Swarm. It's a 4 mana 1/1 flying creature with an insane enter the battlefield effect. Whenever it enters the battlefield, we get to exile target player's graveyard. Then for every artifact and land card we exiled, we get to create a 1/1 spider artifact token with flying. Yeah, first up, it's a graveyard hate card, so bye-bye Reanimator players. And the amount of 1/1 flying tokens this card will generate is absolutely ridiculous in most games. Later in the game, everyone's graveyard will be filled with a ton of lands, a ton of artifacts, and usually you will be able to generate 5 to 20 flying 1/1 tokens with this card, which will all become 9/9 flying bodies after the emblem. One of my personal favorite cards ever printed, Trading Post. It's a 4 mana artifact with 4 activated abilities. For 1 mana and tapping it, we can discard a card to gain 4 life. This is a perfect way to discard high mana value permanents we want in our graveyard. For 1 mana and tapping it, we can generate a 0/1 goat token, which we will be turning into a 9/9 goat token when we get the emblem. For 1 mana and tapping it, we get to sacrifice a creature. Then we can return target artifact card from our graveyard to our hand. Fantastic recursion, especially in a colorless deck that plays a ton of artifacts. And last ability, 1 mana and tapping it, we can sacrifice an artifact to draw a card, just generating us some card advantage. All the options on Trading Post are just fantastic. Nothing over the top, everything is perfectly balanced, but you can just always use this in any kind of situation. Whether you need recursion, creature tokens, card draw, you will always find a use for Trading Post. I just really love this card. Comment I love Trading Post if you like this card as much as I do. Mishra's Self-Replicator. It's a 5 mana 2/2 creature. Whenever we cast a historic spell, we can pay 1 colorless mana. When we do, we get to generate a copy of this card. With this on the battlefield, we can just cast a historic spell, pay 1 mana, we will get 2 Mishra's Replicators. Can cast another card, both of these copies will trigger, we will be able to pay the 1 again, but this time for both Mishra's Replicators, then we will get 4. Yeah, later in the game when you just have a ton of mana, you will be able to generate a ton of copies out of this card, which you can then grow to 9/9 copies when you have the emblem. Really solid token generation if you do have the mana. By far my favorite card in the entire deck is Monkey Cage. It's a 5 mana artifact with a really simple ability. When Monkey Cage is on the battlefield and another creature enters the battlefield, we get to create X 2/2 monkey creatures equal to the mana cost of that creature. Honestly, this card is horrible because you can't play it and just pass the turn since someone will play a 1-drop and you will just generate a 1/1 monkey. But just hear me out. Once you can reduce the cost of Capitoline Triad to 0 mana, Monkey Cage is just insane. You play Monkey Cage, you follow up with Capitoline Triad for 0 mana, and you will then sacrifice Monkey Cage, generating 10 2/2 monkey tokens in the process. Monkey Cage will then go to your graveyard, adding 5 more mana towards the 30 you need to create the emblem. If you're lucky, you already have 30 mana in your graveyard and you can just create the emblem. This will turn all 10 of your 2/2 monkeys into 9/9 monkey bodies, which is just insane. This might sound really hard to pull off, but it's actually really easy to do. Mir Turbine. It's a 5 mana artifact card. It's just a really simple token generator. We just pay the 5 mana and every time we can tap it again, we will just generate a 1/1 Mir. It also has a second ability where we can tap it plus 5 Mir we control and we can tutor our library for any Mir card and put it onto the battlefield. The main and only really real relevant target we will go fetch with this is Mir Battlesphere. When we do, it will enter the battlefield and we will just generate a ton more Mir tokens. And the last card in the token section is Summoning Station. It's a 7 mana card which we can just tap to create a 2/2 colorless creature token. Whenever any artifact is put into any graveyard from play, we get to untap Summoning Station, allowing us to generate another token. As I mentioned before, we play a ton of cards in this deck that allow us to sacrifice artifacts. That way we will be able to untap this card and just generate a ton of tokens, which will then grow into 9/9 bodies later. Next up, we have the support and interaction section. The support cards are the cards that are really awesome and keep this deck together, but didn't fit into any other category. Null Elemental Blast, a 1 mana colorless instant speed spell that allows us to counter target multicolored spell or destroy target multicolored permanent. You'd actually be surprised how many multicolored spells get played on a table of Commander. Almost all commanders are multicolored and the strongest spells that are being played will also be multicolored. So you will always have targets for just your 1 mana counter spell or 1 mana removal spell. Scrap Trawler, one of the best recursion cards you can run in an artifact-based deck. It's a 3 mana 3/2 body. Whenever this card or another artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you can return target artifact card from your graveyard with a lesser mana cost to your hand. So whenever any of your artifacts get removed or you sacrifice any of your artifacts, you will always be able to return another one with lesser mana value from the grave to your hand. You can set up a ton of loops with this. You can do a lot of fancy plays with this. It's just a crazy card. You have to play Scrap Trawler to know how good it actually is. Kirak Clan Ironworks, a classic combo card in any artifact-based deck. We don't run any combos in this deck. That being said, it's still a really good card, even without generating infinite mana. It's a 4 mana artifact that allows us to sacrifice artifacts. When we do, we get to add 2 colorless mana to our mana pool. This deck absolutely loves a ton of colorless mana since we do have really big creatures we can cast. Sacrificing artifacts actually benefits us in most cases, since we can just toss historic permanents into our graveyard to reduce the cost of our commander, and we will also get more mana value in our graveyard to later create the emblem. Mystic Forge. When this is on the battlefield, we can look at the top card of our library at any time. When the top card of our library is a colorless spell or an artifact spell, we're also allowed to cast it from the top. This essentially allows you to play with 1 additional card in hand, being the top card of your library. You can also pay 1 life and tap Mystic Forge to exile the top card of our library. So for example, if we have a land on top and we really don't need a land, you can just tap it, exile the card. We will then have a new card on the top of our library, which we can also look at, and if it's a colorless spell or an artifact, we can also cast it, allowing us to dig 1 card deeper into our deck and just giving us awesome card advantage. Canoptek Spider. It's a draw engine disguised as a 5 mana 4/4 flying spider. Whenever a non-token artifact creature enters the battlefield under our control, we get to draw a card. Since we are a colorless deck, we don't have access to great card draw options, and that's why we play cards like this. Forsaken Monument. It's a 5 mana legendary artifact that really does it all for colorless decks. Other colorless colorless creatures will get a passive +2/+2 stats. Whenever we tap a permanent for a colorless mana, we get to add an additional colorless mana to our mana pool instead. Since we are an entirely colorless deck, this will essentially double our mana production. And the last ability, whenever we cast a colorless spell, we get to gain 2 life. Forsaken Monument is just fantastic, doubling our mana production, boosting the stats of our creatures even further, even gaining us a small amount of life. This is just the perfect card for any colorless deck. As mentioned before, since we are an entirely colorless deck, we really need card draw options. That's why we play Mind's Eye. It's a 5 mana artifact. Whenever an opponent draws a card, we can pay 1 colorless mana. When we do, we also get to draw a card. Mind's Eye seems like a really underrated card, honestly. You can just resolve this and opponents will always be drawing cards. Whenever you have any colorless mana open, you can just invest it in Mind's Eye and you will also draw a card. The Might Stone and the Weak Stone. It's a 5 mana rock that taps for 2 colorless mana. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you get to choose one of 2 options. You can choose to draw 2 cards whenever it enters the battlefield, which is pretty solid in a deck that desperately needs card draw. Or you can give target creature -5/-5 until the end of turn. So basically remove a creature whenever it enters the battlefield. This might be really relevant as an interaction spell. If someone is about to combo off with their commander, for example, you can just play this card and remove the creature. God Pharaoh's Statue. It's a 6 mana legendary artifact. Whenever you have this on the battlefield, each spell your opponents cast will cost 2 generic mana more. This is a really big stacks piece. If, for example, you play against a Storm player that relies on casting a ton of cheap spells in one single turn, they will just be locked out of the game. If you do manage to resolve this card, the game will really be slowed down by a ton. Also has a small little bonus effect. At the beginning of your end step, every opponent will lose 1 life. This puts them on a clock and applies constant little amounts of pressure, forcing your opponents to deal with it, because if they can't close out the game, they will eventually lose to this card. Runaway Boulder, a 6 mana artifact with flash. Whenever it enters the battlefield, we get to deal 6 damage to target creature an opponent controls, somewhat acting as a really expensive removal spell. The main reason why we play this is because it has cycling 2, meaning early in the game we can just pay 2 mana to discard it. We will have another historic permanent in our graveyard and another 6 mana that counts towards the emblem. Later in the game, when you can draw this and you actually have the mana to pay for it, you can use this as a removal spell. Eugen the Ineffable, the only planeswalker we play in this deck. He costs 6 mana and enters with 4 loyalty. He has a passive ability that makes all our colorless spells 2 mana cheaper. His +1 ability is also really good for this deck. It allows us to exile the top card of our library and create a 2/2 spirit token. Whenever the token would leave the battlefield, we get to put the exiled card in our hand. The 2/2 tokens Eugen creates will be turned into 9/9 tokens when you have the emblem. So he both serves as a great cost reducer and as a token generator. And his -3 serves as excellent removal. We can destroy a permanent that's 1 or more colors, meaning almost any permanent in a game of Commander. Just a fantastic card you should include in any colorless commander deck. Talking about auto-include cards, All is Dust. It's a 7 mana card that makes every player sacrifice every permanent they control that's 1 or more colors. In this deck, this will always be a 7 mana, 1-sided board wipe. It also makes every opponent sacrifice a permanent, so even if they have indestructible permanents, they will just have to sacrifice them and it just goes through that. Absolutely crazy card and a must-have in any colorless deck. Sandstone Oracle. It's a 7 mana 4/4 flying body. Whenever it enters the battlefield, we get to target an opponent. If that player has more cards in their hand than we do, we will draw cards equal to the difference. It's another historic card with a really high mana cost that's fantastic in our graveyard for our commander, and later in the game when it's in our hand, it actually serves as great card draw. And the last card in this section is the whopping 11 mana Mycosynth Golem. It has affinity for artifacts, so it costs 1 less mana for every single artifact we control. And it also gives every artifact spell we play affinity for artifacts. This card can create some absolutely ridiculous scenarios. Early in the game, if you manage to create a ton of artifact tokens or get a ton of cheap artifacts out on the board, you can usually cast this for 2-3 mana. Then after you cast this creature, all the following artifact creatures you play will also get affinity for artifacts, meaning you can just chain all the artifact creatures in your hand on the board. You do need the stars to align to create a perfect scenario with this, but trust me, it can happen. Aside from the awesome effect, if you do manage to mill this card, it's another 11 mana historic permanent in your graveyard that you can use for the emblem. If you want to support the channel and choose the future cards I will do these type of videos about, check out the YouTube membership program. You will get access to exclusive chat rooms in the Panzer MTG Discord, and you will be able to submit your deck for review by me. Next up, we have the acceleration section. Since we do play a ton of really high mana value colorless cards, we do play a ton of mana rocks. So later in the game, when we do have the emblem, we're not just stuck with these high mana value cards in our hand, we can actually cast them. Ever-Flowing Chalice. It's a 0 mana artifact with multi-kicker 2. This card will enter the battlefield with 1 counter for every time we paid the multi-kicker. Then we can tap this artifact and we will be able to add 1 colorless mana to our mana pool for every counter Ever-Flowing Chalice has on it. So for example, if you cast this for 6 mana, it will enter with 3 counters. Whenever you tap this artifact, you will be able to add 3 colorless mana to your mana pool. You can both cast this early in the game for a low mana cost, just accelerating your mana, or later in the game for huge amounts, and the next turn you get to tap this, this will produce you a ton of mana. Solging, yeah, you could have seen this one coming in a colorless deck. Hadron Crawler, a 2 mana 0/1 body we can tap to add 1 colorless mana to our mana pool. Both accelerates our mana, and after we got the emblem, it will become a 9/9 body. Milliken, 2 mana for a 0/1 body with an awesome ability that's just perfect for this deck. We can tap it to mill a card and add 1 colorless mana to our mana pool. This card does everything this type of deck wants. Gives us self-mill, accelerates our mana, and after the emblem, it also turns into a 9/9 body. Auto-include. Mindstone. Classic mana rock. Later in the game, we can even sacrifice it to draw a card. Burnished Heart. For 3 mana, we can sacrifice this creature to get 2 basic lands from our library and put them into play tapped. It's a perfect way to filter your deck, and you will add another historic permanent to your graveyard by sacrificing this creature. Foundry Inspector. 3 mana, 3/2 creature that will reduce the cost of all artifact spells we play by 1 mana. As mentioned before, we play 61 artifact cards, so Foundry Inspector will always do a ton of work. Palladium Mirror, a 3 mana colorless mana dork that will add 2 colorless mana to our mana pool if tapped. Semblance Anvil. It's a 3 mana artifact, and whenever it enters the battlefield, we get to imprint, meaning we get to exile a card from our hand. For as long as Semblance Anvil is on the battlefield, all cards we cast that share a card type with the exiled card will cost 2 colorless mana less to cast. Obviously, you will always be exiling an artifact card with this. All our artifact cards will cost 2 generic mana less to cast, which is absolutely insane on a card you can drop on turn 3. Hedron Archive, a 4 mana rock that taps for 2 colorless mana. Later on in the game, if you don't need the mana or the artifact anymore, you can just pay 2, tap Hedron Archive, and you are allowed to draw 2 cards. Stone Speaker Crystal, another 4 mana rock that adds 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. For 2 mana, tapping it and sacrificing it, we get to exile any number of graveyards. Perfect versus reanimation or spellslinger players. And afterwards, you also get to draw a card. So serves as a mana rock, card draw, and grave hate. Tren Dynamo, a 4 mana rock that taps for 3 colorless mana. And last up, we have the most expensive mana rock, Dreamstone Hedron. For 6 mana, it taps for 3 mana. On top of that, for 3 mana, we can also tap it and sacrifice it to draw 3 cards, generating a card advantage in the late game if we don't need the mana anymore. Next up, we have the lands section. We can play a really interesting package of lands since we are an entirely colorless deck, so we do play a ton of utility lands. There's one thing I'd like to point out. We don't play any man lands like Mutavault or Blinkwand Nexus. At first, I thought man lands were fantastic with the ability. Just for 1 mana, animate the 2/2 Mutavault, the emblem will turn it into a 9/9 creature you're able to swing with. But it doesn't work like that. If you animate a man land after you already control the emblem of Capitoline Triad, there is a really weird ruling with the timings and stuff, and the emblem doesn't actually work on a Mutavault, because activating the Mutavault overrides the 9/9 effect. So now that that's out of the way, let's quickly go over the utility lands. Since we only need colorless mana, we play a ton of lands with a small little benefit. Abstergo Entertainment has the bonus ability for 3 mana, and tapping it, we are allowed to return a historic card from our graveyard to our hand. Then we can exile any number of graveyards. Perfect recursion if we mill the card that we'd actually rather have in our hand than in our graveyard. Also serves as a really good graveyard hate tool versus reanimation decks. Arc of Orkaza. Whenever we have the City's Blessing, meaning if we control 10 or more permanents, which is not that hard to do in this deck, for 5 colorless mana and tapping it, we get to draw a card, giving us some extra card advantage later in the game. Bonder's Enclave. For 3 mana and tapping it, we are allowed to draw a card. Only restriction is we need to control a creature with power 4 or more. Since we have a commander we can basically cast for 0 mana that has 7 power, this will never be a problem. Buried Ruin. For 2 mana and sacrificing this land, we get to return target artifact card from our graveyard to our hand. Conduit, Pylons, and Hidden Grotto. These lands allow you to surveil 1 whenever they enter the battlefield. If you are able to drop these early in the game and put a 10 mana permanent into your graveyard, you really will be ahead. They basically function as normal lands in this deck and you will just be able to mill yourself for free. Awesome. Crystal Vein. You can sacrifice this land to add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool instead of the regular 1, really allowing to set up some really explosive plays. Darksteel Citadel. It's an artifact land, so it will count towards affinity for artifacts that we have on some of the cards in our deck. And on top of that, it's also an indestructible land. Demolition Field, a perfect land to deal with some problematic lands your opponents might play, like a Field of the Dead or a Glacial Chasm for example. Drownyard Temple. For 3 mana, we can return this land from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Meaning, if we do mill this due to our self-mill, we can just pay 3 mana if we have it lying around and return this land to the battlefield. Really awesome inclusion in the deck. Foundry of the Consuls. For 5 mana and tapping it, we can sacrifice it to generate 2 1/1 flying thopter tokens. If we have the emblem around, this is basically a land we can sacrifice for 5 to create 2 9/9 flying bodies. Pretty good deal. Fountain Port. This is basically trading post but on a land. If we pay 2 mana and tap it, we get to sacrifice a token and we get to draw a card. For 3 mana and paying a life, we get to create a 1/1 fish token, which will be a 9/9 fish token if we do have the emblem. And for 4 mana and tapping it, we can also create a treasure token. Basically, when you do have some colorless mana left, you will always be able to use a fantastic option that Fountain Port has. Mikoroku, Center of the Sea. For 2 mana and tapping it, every player gets to draw a card. As mentioned before, we do desperately need every single piece of card draw we can get. Mirex. For 3 mana and tapping it, we can create 1/1 colorless might tokens. Perfect token generation, especially after we get the emblem. 3 mana for a 9/9 body. Sanctum of Ugin. Whenever we cast a colorless spell with mana value 7 or greater, we get to sacrifice this land. When we do, we can search our library for any colorless creature card and put it into our hand. Kind reminder, the mana cost of our commander is 10 mana, and most of the time we will be able to cast this for 0, triggering Sanctum of Ugin. This will allow us to tutor our deck for any colorless creature we need at the time. Probably one of the best lands in the deck. Strip Mine. In our deck, this functions as a basic land, which we can also tap to sacrifice and destroy any land that's on the battlefield. If you see an opponent is color screwed and only has 1 land of a specific color, you can just sacrifice a Strip Mine, destroy it, and they won't be able to play the game. People will really not like you for playing this card. War Room. For 3 mana, we get to tap it and draw a card. We also have to pay life for every color our commander has, but since it is colorless, we just have to pay 0 life. And last up, we also play 9 wastes. That's it for my Capitoline Triad in-depth deck tech video. It's the first entirely colorless commander deck I've ever made, and it was really challenging to build this deck. Honestly, the final list we came up with is pretty solid and really unique and fun to play. If you made it this far in the video, let me know by dropping a gear emoji in the comments below, so I know you're a part of the endgame crew of these videos. That being said, hit the like button, hit subscribe, and hit the bell notification icon. Don't forget to share this video with your entire family and all your friends so they know what deck you'll be playing next. Panzer out.